A guide tone line is a compositional technique with two purposes. The first purpose is to help a vocalist singing live find the melody. This use is from opera to pop, so this is a vocal writing issue that's been around for a mere few hundred years. It can also be used as a technique to outline the melody while a soloist improvises against it. The second use is compositional, and that's to create a background line that can be above or below the melody, and a third use in jazz as a basis for improvisation. We're starting with a familiar melody, Amazing Grace. For this example, I've created a MIDI file for you to import into your sequencer so you can see this in Piano Roll Edit. Okay, let's take a listen. We're now going to see how to create the first type of guide tone line. Again, the purpose of this type of guide tone line is to outline the melody for the vocalist or soloist. The first step with the melody is circling the prominent pitches. And here's the starting solution. Take a listen. While the music is still on screen, you can see that I have a very simple chord progression. In fact, I did what most others would do. I looked up Amazing Grace online and jotted down these basic chord changes. These chord changes represent a new compositional insight, and that insight is called harmonic rhythm. Simply put, harmonic rhythm is a rhythm that arises based on chord placement. It shows me, based on where the chord changes take place, a technique for developing the rhythm of the background line. Here's my guide tone line based on the melody. The red arrows indicate where there are chord changes. They also indicate an harmonic rhythm for the background line based on where the chord changes take place. For example, in the top line you see G, D7, E minor, and C. The G is for 2 beats, while the D7 is for 1 beat. In the next bar, the E minor is for 2 beats, while the C is for 1 beat. Following the chord changes, next up is a counterline. Now you see the guide tone line of the melody and a line below it that follows the rhythm of the chord changes. So how did I create the line below? Well, what you're looking at here is actually a double guide tone line. The top line outlines the melody. The lower line is also a guide tone line, but based on the third or fifth of a chord if it's a triad, or a third or a seventh when it's a seventh chord. In the lower guide tone line, I've marked which note is what tone of the chord. Let's take a listen. Now the same thing in piano roll edit. Listen again. So, we can establish as a rule of thumb that with triads, the third and fifth can be used as a guide tone line. With seventh chords or in jazz writing, the third and seventh can be used as guide tones to create background lines and to give direction in soloing. Here's Amazing Grace chorded for the left hand using the guide tone line I just created. I consider this a first draft to see if I like it or not. Let's listen. And here it is in piano roll edit. Here's a slight revision where I made the left hand part less leaping around. Take a listen. And here it is in piano roll edit. We're back to our last revision. At 1, we have either the melody or the melody outlined in the top stave. At 2, the first line of the bass clef is a guide tone line, and at 3, the balance of the left hand is the guide tone line, here voiced down in triads. To this, you could add a 4, which is to create a bass line. And earlier, I gave you techniques for doing this. Now, here's where you begin making some serious compositional decisions. Here are the chords as I found them on the internet. This harmonization is very simple. Almost any guitar player or keyboard player should be able to perform it as is. But, and this is a big but, it's boring. And what makes it boring is that by repeating the same chord, G, over and over, there's no motion. There's no sense the music is going anyplace. It's just static. So, one option you have is to take the information I taught you at the beginning of the course and to see where to reharmonize the line. Or you could keep the same chord changes, and depending upon who and what you're writing for, the inner guide tone line does not have to so rigorously stick to just being the 3rd, 5th, or 7th. You can get adventurous and create a much more interesting inner line. And if you know your harmony, then you know that every chord in the major key is assigned to a chord scale. So you know per chord what pitches are available to work with. Keeping the same chords, here's a revised inner line. Take a listen, and yes, there are MIDI files for you to import into your sequencer. The compositional lesson here is that the guide tone line becomes the point of departure for development. I cannot say in all honesty that I was particularly inspired by the melody and chords, but craftsmanship gave me a place to start generating ideas. And so within a few minutes, some pretty interesting what-if insights began showing up. Even without reharmonizing the melody, again, as I showed you how to do earlier in the course, you have lots of solutions depending upon how you want to score it. One more change to point out. In the previous boring version, I had harmony voiced down. In this version, I created a moving line. So you could take this piece and create a separate bass line for it, and you'd still have 3-part span of orchestration. And then you could create a 4th part by creating a line above the main melody. So, your assignment, should you decide to accept it, is to either work with Amazing Grace or apply these concepts to one of your own songs or themes. And to your success.